Lit Musings, the Fantasy Lovers Podcast.
Hey everyone, I am author Parker Sinclair. Author Jessica Osment and I are doing our first ever show for our new podcast, Lit Musings. We both love to read and write novels. Both of us have multiple published works under our belt, and we've been working closely together for over a year as co-authors for an anthology and with my need for Jessica's artistic talents. Jess is an amazing graphic artist and illustrator. She's done 5 of my covers, multiple graphics, beta reads, and formats for me. So basically, I can't function in the author world without her. Hey, Jess, say hi.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Awesome. This is super exciting. So, to start off our first podcast, we'll share a little about ourselves and why we've decided to create a podcast before we hit our first topic. And this is one that we'll spread it out over the first few podcast episodes since there's quite a bit to cover. That's not saying how old I am, but whatever. And we're going to talk about how magic and fantasy have entered our lives in a way that has basically led Jessica and I to both write primarily in the fantasy genre. Although I think you're doing a mystery right now, aren't you?
Yes, it's something new to me and I hope I've done well with it, but I did a lot of research, so hopefully we do well.
Awesome. Diversity. That's the way to go. I'm doing a purely romance one right now as well. So,
New for you.
yay, we're not pigeonholed at all.
Yeah.
So, and to finish out the podcast, we'll each take a turn reading from one of our published books. I know I'm reading from my very first one, Trust, the Alex Connor Chronicles, Book 1. And what are you sharing with us today, Jess?
I am reading an excerpt from Dark Waters. It's a submission I put in called Saphira, the Lost Lady of the Water.
Awesome. Very cool. So since I've talked enough for now, let's hear from Jessica and see how she's gotten to this place in her career, which is stuck with me apparently. Say hi to everybody, Jess.
Hey guys. As most of you guys know, I'm guilty of writing and devouring fantasy novels that, there's no tomorrow. I'm also a graphic designer who enjoys building my business, the Magic Quill Graphics. But there's actually another side to the indie world that I haven't tapped into yet, which is actually odd for me because I'm known for dipping my feet into pretty much everything I can that has to do with books. I've made it my mission to try to make, connections with readers who might enjoy the things I have to say about books, the books that I read and review, but also the books that I put my blood, sweat, and tears into creating from the ground up. So for me, establishing Lit Musings alongside my incredibly talented co-host, Parker Sinclair, was about me allowing myself to keep up with my readers in a different way, about gaining those critical new connections in our community that are geared toward the fantasy genre and to push the work that I've already stolen countless hours from my family to create. So I really like the idea of us not only speaking about books, but also many other topics that pop up in the indie world that we see from day to day. I'm sure I'm not the only one who believes the indie community is oversaturated with politics, vague booking, and childish conflicts. For most of this reason, my goal here is to steer our listeners to more positive issues that actually have something to do with our profession. I'm looking forward to meeting new fantasy and paranormal authors and having them on the show to speak about what drove them into the indie pool and how they've actually grown since then. So you'll find that I'll be doing my best to also collect trade tips, which I thought would be a really cool idea to help everyone on the road to publishing so that we might grow as a team rather than every man for himself. The last reason I really want to go this direction with pushing myself toward more transparency in the community is because I lost my mother at the age of 14. And she always nudged me to put my best foot forward and to develop the creative side of my brain that was always trying to take over anyway. So she taught me to read and to write and to love myself. And she introduced me to my favorite writer, which is Stephen King. And through that small action, I was able to connect with her even now, with her being long gone. So this show for me is dedicated to her memory because without it, I wouldn't be here today.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for touching on all those things that you mentioned, bringing the community together, I think the trade tips is perfect as well. We do plan on having some guests on here, so I think we'll be able to share amongst ourselves and with the community which will be fantastic. And you're right, this is another area of media and sharing that I haven't dipped my toes into either. And I think that with everybody having to hustle and bustle and they're in their car all the time and too busy to always be able to read, even though that's our livelihood is, writing books for people to read, if they can listen also,
Yes, exactly.
that is something that's going to reach people that we haven't been able to at this point. And I
Exactly.
think that's for all ages, which is why I've been kind of doing audio, transitioning to audiobooks for my stuff as well. So that's great. So a little about me, a little bit of my background, and getting to where I am right now is I was still am, was, am that dorky girl who had a pen name in elementary school, had it written all over my journals. Of course, then start to actually like your name as you get older. But I mean, even my daughters right now, I feel like they want to change their names. I'm like, wait a second, I took forever trying to pick that for you. You will love it. So I have kept all of my school books. Yes, those gigantic textbooks, those things do exist. It's not all online. And I still have it. The physiological psychology book. I still have that down in my closet because I just knew somewhere down the line I was going to reference that book later for a story.
And you did.
And yes, and I have. And I think that's the most vivid memory I have as a child thirsting to escape into these fantasy books was looking at my father's collection in our little office, which actually my brother-in-law calls the closet that he slept in on a rock hard futon when he first met my parents. But technically it was the office. You had to sit on the futon to type on the computer, but whatever. He had this built-in bookcase with all of these books, and I just remember, glowing blue swords, dragons, spaceships, elves. Some of them were scantily clad females, which was kind of the main main area that women got tossed into the sci-fi fantasy back then. But we've come a long way. Let's say that for now. But I just remember seeing them all on the cover, and I longed to be able to read them, and I just couldn't at that point. Still kind of learning how to read and not ready for those by any means. But I never thought at that point that I could write anything like that. And maybe part of that, and we could touch on this topic at some point too, is a lot of those authors were men. And maybe subconsciously, I didn't think I would be able to be that author because they were men. So I just never thought that I would be able to have a book on that shelf at that point. But then later in life, and that's as many short stories later, advanced English classes, creative writing classes, poem books, thousands of journals that I have, and even little snippets I wrote on that could have been like the back of a napkin. I just kind of just said, well, why the hell not? Why can't I come up with a strong character and backstory and supporting characters and lots of magic? Why not? So 14 years later, of course, because it doesn't happen overnight, at least for me, it didn't. After the first conception of Alex Connor, I published my first novel in 2014. But hey, it's all a journey, and it's been quite the ride for me. I have 2 young girls, 4 animals. I swear I'd probably have more if I could, but I just can't fit them anywhere. I have a master's in counseling where I was a school counselor for 13 years in high schools, and now I have a new writing career, and I'm loving it. And this podcast was just really the next logical step in expressing my written words orally, if that even makes sense, and
Yeah.
discussing some cool topics that Jessica and I have found that we both have a lot of interest in. So I think this is a match made in heaven, which we are in different states, spread out a little bit, but I think this is going to be exciting for us to do, and hopefully for you all listening in and joining our journey. And we're always open to ideas throughout this, and what you guys want us to talk about, and who you want us to try to get on the show, or if you want to come on the show, things like that. So this is going to be an awesome new journey for Jessica and I. So welcome along on the
Yes.
crazy train.
Well, yes. Throw us a line. Tell us what you want to hear.
Exactly. We can't come up with it all ourselves. We're gonna go crazy, or those little other thousands of voices that are going crazy in our heads. So we're gonna move along to our first topic. We'll always have some sort of topic. Of course, we'll go off topic because we like to ramble. But our first topic for this is we kind of wanted to speak about the first time we remember falling in love with fantasy and magic. Which for many of us, it may be stories that were read to us as a child, or movies or shows that we saw, because it took a while for us to be able to read ourselves. So we had kind of come up with the idea of what are those movies that had first touched upon those fantasy aspects that we can still remember today, that have led us to want to write in this genre. And we want to start, of course, back in time with when we were younger. And what are some of those movies that stand out to us from our childhood? And I'll let Jessica take it away.
Okay, guys, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this one. I chose to talk about The Little Mermaid today. Obviously, I love mermaids. And the biggest reason for this is that I'm a water lover. Anything that has to do with water worlds and magic, it just really draws me in, no matter what it is. I think I have probably over 50 fish. You were talking about how you had a lot of animals. I am an animal lover too. And basically, I find it interesting that we have yet to explore most of our oceans and that we may find more if we just put our minds to it and show a little initiative. So I love the story behind The Little Mermaid because it teaches us who we are. Not only that, but it teaches us to love who we are and to not change who we are because we love. And that there are so many people out there that are willing to take what you love away from you just to gain the upper hand. So it's a strong coming of age movie for me that I really connected with as a young girl, and not just as a young girl, but as an adult. And I compiled 4 fun facts for you guys. I don't know if you knew about any of these. The first one is that in the original adaptation of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, Ariel is actually from off of the coast of Denmark, where it is not very far from Arendelle, if you guys like Frozen. Um, and then on my second one, I have, unlike most people, I'm sure, I haven't seen the second movie because I did not know there was a second movie, which is crazy. But apparently, that movie explains that Captain Hook is the one who killed Ariel's mother. Yeah,
Wow.
I did not know that.
Me either.
And I just watched that movie or that show, Black Sails, and I was like, oh my gosh, so many connections.
Wow. Well, now I'm going to have to watch that.
Yes, I know. I think I was telling you about it. And then my third reason that I love this movie is because Ariel's design actually came from Melissa Milano's body. The artists used her body as inspiration. And then
Love her too. I think her name.
I know. I thought that was
What was
pretty
her name in that show? Was it Sam? I can't remember. What was it?
I think this was during her time in Charmed.
Charmed. Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, apparently, animating the film was a lot of work, so Disney had to outsource their manpower to a Chinese animation studio called Pacific Rim to draw over 1 million bubbles by hand.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy.
That's a lot of bubbles.
Yes, and me being a designer, I'm just like, no.
No more circles.
And then you guys know I'm a big nerd. I love Harry Potter. It's basically another amazingly written series that I fell in love with because there are so many things that I was able to connect with Harry about. Yes, I'm a nerd, but there are so many factors that pushed me to read this book and watch all of the movies several times over. Like the fact that there's a 10-year-old boy who had no idea a magical world was hidden and was at his fingertips. A world that opened its doors to the boy like he never left. So I think we all yearn for a connection like that and yearn for being accepted like that. I know I was when I was a kid. So here are my fun facts, and then I'll let you take over. J.K. Rowling actually came up with the names of the Hogwarts houses on the back of a barf bag. Yeah, she's crazy.
Nice.
And here's one fact that I thought was really awesome. The Dementors in the story, they're actually a representation of J.K. Rowling's depression, which you can find a lot of similarities between how a person might feel like their life's being sucked away because they're and then apparently Stephen King said that Dolores Umbridge was the perfect villain, which we all know I love Stephen King.
Oh, she is evil. I had a hard time getting through that. It made me so uncomfortable, which is interesting because there's a lot of monsters, vicious, disgusting looking things. And here is this like all sweater vests and smiles, and she's just creepy as all get out. I'm with them on that one. I agree with you, Stephen.
And for my last one, which is something that I can actually connect with, J.K. Rowling wrote that her final chapter in book 7 before she was finished with the books, which I tend to write or at least have an outline of what I want to happen at the end of my books first because I want to know how I'm going to get there. So I really like that she did that because it's insane how she got to that point 7 books later. It's crazy.
Right.
So,
A- And I was reading in one of the entertainment like type magazines about the Fantastic Beasts series that she already has the whole story is arced
yep.
out. I think it's 5 films or
Yeah,
something. So it's very interesting to stretch your mind that far with that much in between it all. It just
exactly.
seems
I've seen her notes and they're so detailed. It's just insane. I don't even know how she got it from paper to book. It's crazy. But I mean, we all start off somewhere and we all know our crazy ways, how we get through it. So I think it's cool to find out little facts like that just to see how we all kind of hit home.
I loved all those. Those are
Well, thank
awesome.
you.
I could learn about that stuff all day.
Right?
All day. Amazing. So I am going to show my age a little bit about what was out when I was a child.
Oh, fun.
And I agree wholeheartedly with her selections, which is awesome. Little Mermaid. I remember, I guess that must have been maybe in high school when that came out, and I had the tape of the soundtrack.
Aw. I think we all have that now.
Oh my gosh, I remember it was a white cassette tape, and I would just play it, and it would flip over, flip over to the actually, mine actually did flip over on its own. I know, before then I had one you had to turn it over, but I just love that soundtrack, and when I had my children, I would sing those songs, and I still do. They still ask for me to sing, some of the songs from Little Mermaid. It's awesome, and then, Harry Potter, I mean, still, I am obsessed with the new Fantastic Beasts coming out, The Crimes of Grindelwald. I am very excited about that. I heard it's gonna be much darker than
Yeah,
the one before, so I'm a little concerned about taking my youngest, with us to that one because she was already kinda scared
the
of,
last one.
of the last one. What was the boy's name? I don't wanna give away anything, but, the boy's name that, ends up being what they're kinda tracking down. Gosh, what's his
Oh,
name? Constance Penance? Whatever. Anyway, I think, he was kinda freaky for her as well,
yeah.
but she gets scared of music. Music is the main thing that frightens her, so, when she gets scared in Paddington 2, I'm a little worried about her.
Poor
I'm
thing.
like, "What is scaring you in this music?" She's like, "The sound." She's, like, under a blanket. Oh my gosh.
Maybe she's
Anyway.
really sensitive to things like that. It
Mhm. I mean, that just shows you how powerful music is,
Yeah.
like, how it can make you happy or sad. I mean, I was in yoga just relaxing, and this music came on. I've never even heard it before, and I just my eyes, I just started crying. So
Mm,
it's just this powerful the way that it can transport you. So, I love all things movies, not just the scripts and the characters, but just, every part of it, and I think music is such a huge piece, and,
it is.
that's why I integrate it into my books as well and try to link to the artist songs, on the ebook so that people can go click on there and look at them themselves. So, anyway, I digress. So for me, as I said, showing my age a little bit, and no, I did not see this movie when it came out in 1956. They did a replaying of it in this small town in Colorado that my parents decided they wanted to move to when we were little. That lasted a year living on a farm. I think they realized that was a bit much, for them in their early 30s with 2 young kids. So, they did try Colorado again, and we stayed longer the second time, but, we didn't last very long at this one. But anyway, I remember driving in the snow, to go see this in the movie theater and just staring, I mean, just transfixed at the screen, and I still literally get chills about it to this day, and it was my oldest daughter's favorite movie for the longest time, that and Nemo. So I just love that they have fallen in love with it as well, although my youngest, as you can imagine, is terrified of Maleficent, just terrified. Um, so it was interesting when the new, Descendants came out that she wanted to be Mal and her sister was Maleficent last year for Halloween. I think so, maybe, but I haven't shown her the movie Maleficent. I think, I wonder what she would think of that, but I just I was kind of not sure if I wanted to watch that new movie after just being in love with Disney's version of Sleeping Beauty, and, once again, the music in that and the fairies and just everything that made up that whole story. And but the Maleficent came down. I mean, damn, that was a pretty cool story. And I'm not going to once again give away anything, but if you haven't seen that, the take on Maleficent and her history and how she ties in with Aurora is awesome. I love that one also. I don't know about
And I
you,
love
but
that it's from her point of view.
hmm
Yes.
hmm
Very good.
yes, because I mean, there's this whole backlash. I think with a lot of some Disney stuff too, that the woman or the princess just waits around for somebody to save her type of thing. Which I think I cannot wait for the scene in the new Wreck-It Ralph coming out where all the princesses are together. I think that is gonna
It's gonna
be
be
quite
cute.
entertaining. If you haven't seen the trailer for that, it's
Yes.
pretty funny. So, other than that, after that one, and I know there's many others that we can touch on later, but Dark Crystal always comes to mind, and maybe it's because so many times I talked about it, nobody knew what in the hell I was talking about. There are so many people that don't even know that this movie even exists. That Frank Oz and Jim Henson put. I mean, it's the hard, as he says, the hardest thing he's ever done. The most time consuming. I mean, just even looking at the puppets that they created and the characters in the Dark Crystal. I mean, it is way, way, way before their time to come and bring this. And I think some of it might have been that it was a little dark compared to what he was doing with the Muppet Show. All of a sudden, this comes out, and people probably flocked to it or went to
They
see
didn't
it.
know
And
how to receive it. Yeah.
yeah, they didn't know what was going on here. I mean, you got this little Gelfling guy running around and girl running around, and these things about the Skeksis are like terrifying. Just their voices
Yeah.
screeching in my head, and the way that they moved, and their vulture-like,
It was very
frightening.
new. Nobody had ever done that before.
Never have done that before, and they felt everything was so realistic to me. I mean, to me at that point, just watching it all. And now I hear that they're doing a Netflix show, which I'm super excited about them picking this up and doing something with it. And I wish Jim would have been around to see what they were going to do, but I can't wait for that to come out. And
Mhm.
I have not shown my girls that movie because I do think that they're going to be frightened of that. And the Skeksis, the machine that they use in that, it reminds me of the Dementors now that you bring it up, and they're just
It does.
sucking the life out of these poor little things. So I just think that my kids would be frightened of that at this point. I'm sure I was super young when I watched it, but have you seen some of the PG movies now that we used to watch? I'm
I have
like,
to almost view
whoa,
them
sorry
first.
guys. Oh yeah, man, language, boobs. I'm like, wow.
So much is accepted now that wasn't then. It's crazy.
No, our kids are so sheltered. And I mean, I even am like reacting to it like I sure I wasn't as a kid. I don't think my parents were, but now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." And I'm sitting here going, "Well, wait a second.
Yeah,
I did." But I also think that we saw things a lot younger than we did. I've listened to, a counselor friend of mine say that we don't remember much until maybe 5th, 6th grade as women, and even men sometimes don't remember much of their childhood till their teens. So every time you think about when I was a kid, you're not as young as maybe some of the kids that you're talking to
exactly.
about it. So it's super interesting. So, but I do have a little write-up that I linked to, plus a YouTube video of what Netflix
Okay.
is doing with the story of the Dark Crystal. It's on the blog that we have also connected. We'll connect this podcast to as well. It's on WordPress. It's Noun, Words, and Memories, and it's the most recent post that I've done where I do discuss Sleeping Beauty and the Dark Crystal, and Jess will be doing the next one, touching on what she discussed today with Little Mermaid and Harry Potter. So anyway, I'd love to hear from you guys if you think those 4 movies are something that comes to mind for you as fantasy lovers, or even as just, when you were younger, or if you're young now and you just heard about them for the first time, or older now and you want to go check them out, because those 4 are definitely, for me at least, even Jess's selections have really either brought about fantasy and magic into my life or have just propelled it and
I
continued
agree.
my
I
love
was kind
for
of
it.
sad you already chose those.
And when you picked yours, I was like, hell yeah, those are perfect additions to it. So now we can go into our own writings that have these awesome fantasy and magical aspects that probably have been derivative from some of what we just spoke about today. So Jess, I'll let you take it away with your excerpt.
Alrighty, guys. This is actually, I'm just going to do a little fun, easy excerpt. I'm just going to do the first few pages of the start of my novella. So give me just a second. Okay. Somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Darkness surrounded the Maiden of the Sea as she sank to the bottom of the quarry, a pit so absurdly deep it seemed to have no end. Scratching haplessly at the sides of massive boulders on her way down, Saphira's nails were ripped from her fingertips, though she didn't pay any mind to the excruciating pain. All she could manage to voice was "stop" as she craned her neck upward to catch a glimpse of the ones who had zealously sealed her fate. To her demise, she was no longer. Oh, sorry, guys. To her demise, she could no longer see Poseidon's royal guard as they swam out of sight, never to return. They had abandoned Saphira, cursing her to an eternity at the deepest depths of the ocean for breaking the fundamental laws of the merfolk. Now she would pay for her insolence. A muffled thud pierced the silence as she finally found the bottom of her secluded tomb. A swarm of sand, small shells, and seaweed rushed around her body, blocking most of the ominous view before her once she settled. It wasn't as if she could see much anyway. The only perceivable light was at the opening of the channel. As desolation set in, the mermaid struggled to make out any details just as the shadows of the water reached for her limbs and she withdrew inward. She wasn't afraid, for she wasn't alone. She would never be alone again. Internally, damaged beyond recognition, Saphira wandered aimlessly, struggling to drag her dastardly chain as far as it would allow her to dredge it. It weighed more than any typical man-made chain and would stop her from fleeing the hell she was currently living in. For just how long she scraped it from one side of the sea to the other, she would never know. For time held no residence down in the abyss, where the only mentality she had to consider was her failures and the crimes she committed against her kind. As it was, the waterling never left her lover's side. Darius was the only thing that kept her anchored to the ocean floor, and she didn't have it in her to let him go. Their epic love story had been ripped apart, and she would never truly be content without him. Poseidon knew as much, and in all his cruelty, so he did the one thing he knew would fill Saphira with immeasurable torment. The callous god ordered his men to tether the lovers together, to strap a hefty anchor at their waists, and to let them go at the deepest trench they could find. A place where she'd never be able to escape from. He didn't even see her off, for Poseidon felt he'd been betrayed by the one person he could always trust. The worst part of the curse was that Saphira had no choice in watching Darius crumble as his body decomposed from the elements. She would suffer, and her rage would build. And that's all I'm going to give you guys today.
See, and that's why I like the audio of it too, like just listening to you read it and how the author can do those pauses and just add in those inflections and all those things. Anyway, that sounded awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I am going to hop into my first novel, Trust the Alex Connor Chronicles, Book 1. This is the book that I had the idea about while living in San Diego in 2000. And like I said, it took me 14 years. 14 years to finish. And Jessica and I also share I share a mutual tragedy with the loss of our mothers. My mother passed away in 2010. And it was that spring of 2014 that I finally went away with a friend of mine and had this just spiritual experience in the Arizona desert. We went to Scottsdale, and my mom loved the desert and loved animals as much as we do. And just something happened there. And she was just there. I remember her touching my hands and speaking to me. And when I came home from that trip, this book just came out, floodgates. And I just, I can't, I was like possession of mine. I just like let it all go. And I think I was so angry for so long that I realized I wasn't reading or writing anything. Nothing made sense when she passed away. And I think that kind of had me moving past the anger of it and finding something new in my life. So, I infuse so much of this in here. And just like you, she taught me to read. And I remember her telling me that she, in tears, that she was hoping to teach my daughters to read, and passed not long after that. And so I always say that she taught me to read and write, and my dad taught me to love it all. So because of his love for reading and his mother's love. So anyway, this is my first novel. Jessica and I just went back and rebranded this baby, gave it a beautiful new
Oh,
cover, went through with fresh eyes to edit, which for a author to go back to their very first work, some people cringe when they hear me tell them that I was going to do that because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to look at that. But when you're talking about a first book in a
wow.
series, I need to make sure this is a good intro for you all. And so, also when you join my newsletter, which you can get to through parkersinclair.net, you get this ebook for free. Because I want you guys to be welcomed into my world and hopefully want to read the rest of them. So I'm actually reading from towards the end of this. I'm not going to be giving much away while reading it, but I wanted to introduce you to one of my favorite characters, Volant. So this is chapter 21, Demons and Fathers. And each of these chapters starts with a journal entry. Usually there are flashes back in time so you can learn more about Alex, but this is just kind of a poetic type of journal entry. So chapter 21, Demons and Fathers, journal entry. I just wanted you to hold me close. I couldn't feel the ground below, and I didn't sense the world above. I only had you. I only had the lightness of your touch, the feel of the breath on my skin, and the beating of your heart against my back. I just wanted you to cradle me in the darkness, but not to leave me here. The cool obsidian stone touches my palm, and I swear I hear a sizzle as it makes contact with the ring. I don't think I'm going to get out of here. Excuse me, I've already messed up. I don't think I'm going to get out of what Greg is asking of me, but hopefully Ryan will get here before it is decided that I am no longer needed. Holding the knife, I strike it across my inner arm and watch the warm blood trickle down, moving in streams along my fingers, losing their fight against gravity and falling to the ground. Greg's eyes turn black as his power takes in the sight, and I know he can taste victory coming. I don't think there is any way to continue stalling, and I try to keep Stephen exiled where he is. So instead, I hold on to the belief that Ryan is coming. Now I can only hope Stephen will be easy work for him. But truly, his exile has been anything but easy to deal with, so I doubt this will be simple for anyone. This Volant is the wild card, but that is something that we will have to figure out along the way. Okay, good girl. Now call for him. Call for Volant. Call for the demon you've gifted my father to. He's been waiting for you. A little too reverently, if you ask me. Oh, great. A demon groupie. Well, maybe he can be reasoned with then, or at least kept out of things. I don't think it can harm me unless I'm in his dimension, but then again, I don't know shit about demons. I didn't even know Stephen was being held by one. Okay, you little boy, keep your little boy pants on. This doesn't exactly tickle, you know. Just wait till Daddy Dearest gets here, Greg. There is no way he can hide his true nature, and you'll see the mistake you are making soon enough, brother. Yep, I can get smartassy at very inappropriate times, and apparently being faced with meeting a demon and possible death is one of those times. Greg grabs the knife from my right hand and takes a new zip tie to lock me back in place in the chair. Silence takes over the room until sounds of my blood plopping into the pool on the floor breaks the quiet apart. Shut up and call for Volant. I don't want to hear your filthy mouth say anything else, or I'll bind you to him instead of letting you out of your miserable excuse for a life. And see how much you like that. I guess this is it. No Ryan yet. Just me in a small room that's about to get pretty crowded. Volant, I call upon you. That sounded appropriate. I mean, how do you call a demon anyhow? I'm here with your buddy Greg. He asked me to call you. Hope this is a good time. Greg obviously doesn't like my creative scripting and lets me know it by digging his fingers into the open cut in my arm, causing me to scream out in pain. A whoosh makes my eardrums pop, and I know we are no longer alone. Perhaps it's just me, but you may want to gag her, Doctor. I'm sure your neighbors will be able to hear her soon if that keeps up. The voice comes from behind me, as cold as ice and as smooth as oil. A smell like death and lilies assaults my senses, and I struggle to turn my head around, nearly knocking myself over in the chair. I want to see what is back there. The binds on my wrist dig in deeper, but I don't care. I do not want my back to a demon. Let me help you with that. I am suddenly launched into the air, chair and all, and turned around to face the demon named Volant. No horns, no red skin, no scales or tail. Volant is a normal-looking man, dressed in a business suit and tie, looking more like he leads a boardroom meeting than a hell dimension. He smiles, and his teeth twinkle at me, sharp and deadly. Yep, that's more like it, all demony and freaky. His hair is platinum blonde, long and straight as it brushes along the tops of his shoulders. The gray suit makes his hair stand out even more in the darkness. There, that's better. Let's ease up a bit, shall we, Greg? I think she'll behave, won't you, Alex? hitting the X hard. He moves around me, and his sharp nails trail along my left arm, smearing the blood there before Volant lifts his fingers to his mouth, slowly licking the redness off each one of them. Ew. My name is Volant, but you know that already, don't you, young Alex? My, don't you taste delicious? Such power and strength. You'll make an excellent addition to my collection. I squirm in the chair to no avail. I have thoroughly enjoyed this past year, feeding off your fear and mistrust. Nothing personal, as you know. Creating nightmares is Stephen's specialty, and my, oh my, did father, son, and your own innate mistrust of others give him such fuel to create them. What fun this has been. So thank you, Alex, really, thank you. What in the hell? There is no way I'm going anywhere with this guy. And I will stop there. That's that's Volant. I always picture a little bit of Brad Pitt with his hair all straight. I don't know this. I talk a little bit more about his appearance, but yes, little vampire demon esque blending. But yeah,
This is really cool for me to be able to hear because Trust is one of the only two that I haven't read yet. So, and I'm very interested in Volant. I've always been interested in him and the story of how they got together. So, I cannot wait to read this excerpt
awesome.
myself.
Yeah, that's fun to read. Very cool. So yeah, that series is ongoing. I have 4 out right now, and I'm working on 2 other books, but I'll get back to Alex because people are asking what happens next with her. But that is just the first book, and she's fun. It's fun to write that first person character for her. So anyway, guys, we were planning on keeping these around 30 minutes, so we're at almost 40. So I think this is perfect. So we'll kind of close up shop for now. That's it for us today. Like I said, we're planning on doing these about 30, 40 minutes long once a month, and with some more guests, because we know we need some more characters than just the 2 of us. Oh, and those ones that are in our heads, of course, for the show. So stay tuned to listen and follow the podcast on parkersinclair.net/Lit Musings podcast. That's Parkersinclair.net/LITMUSINGS/PODCAST. I don't know if I'll do that again next time. I thought I should say that all out loud, but parkersinclair.net/Lit Musings podcast. There'll also be a link to it through the Nouns, Verbs, and Memories blog on WordPress, but you can find all this just by going to parkersinclair.net, and we'll also link with Jess soon. So Jess, any closings for you? You want to talk about tell them your website link, anything else?
Actually, I would rather mention the pre-order for my next book coming out. It should be ready today. And I do not have my link available yet.
Well, they can go.
But as soon as I get the link, I will put it in the comments or something so that you guys can take a look.
Yeah, and she can also, just go into Amazon and searching up Jessica Osment, Ozment, and then Parker Sinclair also. You can find us both on there. I did not say what day it was. It is Wednesday, October 24th, 2018. This is Lit Musings podcast with author Parker Sinclair and author Jessica Osment, and we love what we're doing day in and day out, and we can't wait for you all to enjoy this new show with us. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Come back and join us.
Follow us on parkersinclair.net/Lit Musings podcast.